Hi everybody, it's Usernamekate and welcome back to my channel. Today Suzuki's V Strom 800 RE goes back to Milton Keynes. That is where I'm off to. So I'm going to share some final thoughts and impressions on this bike. I did ride it in the launch back early this year at Montpellier, but I've gotten a bit more UK riding under my belt on this thing. So yeah, keep watching if you want to know what I think. Well guys, it's no secret that I really like this bike. I like all of Suzuki's 800 bikes. I like the GSXS, I like the GSXR, I like the VStrom DE, and I like the RE. So for those of you who didn't watch my initial first ride review at the launch of this thing, this bike houses a 776cc parallel twin, double overhead cam, 270-degree crankaroo. It has 83 brake horsepower and 78 newton meters of torque. And to be honest, it's quite the powerhouse. So the engine on this bike is pretty nice. Now it's a bit filthy because Mike went doing the ABR trails on it like a legend. Close the visor, don't really want a lungful of that. But I'm going to mention some things that I find about this bike. Firstly, it's mega easy to ride, like ridiculously easy. It's very smooth on the throttle, it picks up instant, it sounds awesome as it does it. Yeah, I really like the pull of this bike. One of the questions that I get is, Kate, would you go for the GSX-8S or would you go for the V-Strom 800 RE purely as a road going bike? And to be honest, I feel like I'd go for the RE. I'd go for this one personally if it was me, and I would go for black because I don't really like the other colour options that are available. Three-wheeler. Yeah, and the reasons I would is because I do find this bike, because it's a lot heavier, to feel a bit more planted at high speeds, like on the motorway and stuff like that. And I can thrash this around as equally well as I can the GSX-8S, even though that is designed as like a sportier naked. Like, I kind of have no gripes treating this like a big sporty naked. I love the comfort element of this bike. One of the things I think Suzuki have done really well with this bike is the seat comfort. Now, I've done like 3 hours on the go with this bike and yeah, no issues whatsoever with comfort. Quite like it. On this, compared to the DE, we've got a smaller front wheel, we've got less suspension travel, and it does make this bike handle a lot better than the 800 DE. Don't get me wrong, I love the 800 DE, and because that suspension travel is so long and you've got that big 21-inch front, handling feels a little bit vague and a little bit floaty when you're really giving it the berries on the DE. Feels kind of like you're riding a magic carpet that's just floating through the bends, whereas with this you get so much more front end feel. You do feel a little bit more connected to the road. Tuck in here just before the zigzags. You're not supposed to filter on zigzags. Everyone's moving out a bit. I feel like if you're somebody that loves to do a lot of off-roading, but you do want a bike that can take you comfortably on the lanes and the twisties still, then the DE is for you. Now my friend Lucia, I've just been in the Lake District with her, and she was on her 800 DE that she's bought, and she was riding that on the lanes perfectly fine. But then if she wants to just venture out off-road, she can do that, because we can switch the ABS off on that bike, but we can't switch the ABS off on the RE at the touch of a button. I mean, I'm sure there's a way to do it, probably involves fiddling with a few fuses and the likes, but straight off the box, the RE, you know, you can't disengage that ABS. If you're somebody that, you know, does mainly commuting, touring, long distances, and doesn't really have that much intention of going off-road, then the RE is definitely for you. But having said that, Mike took the RE off-road with the road tyres that are on it at the ABR festival, and obviously he's very conscious that it does have road tyres on, and you know, it does have the ABS still live and kicking on the bike. But I mean, he was still putting some people on full-blown enduro bikes with knobblies to shame. Ooh, we got an Aston. We got an Aston. Oh. So I feel like if you were to put some, you know, kind of like dual purpose tyres on this bike, you'd be alright. I think you'd get away with it. Yeah, it's definitely capable of doing a bit of off-roading if that's what you want to do, like occasionally. But pushing on the lanes on this thing is where its strength lies in comparison to its DE brother. It's also a lot lower in the seat height than the DE, which is good for little limbed Larrys like me. It's hard to comment my thoughts on the riding triangle of this bike in comparison to the 800 DE, purely because I haven't ridden the DE recently. Now, theoretically, on paper, I know that the foot pegs are a little further back, the bars are a little lower and forward on this. But to me, with my build, weight and stature, it's not enough for me to consciously think that it's radically different. Like, I can consciously think that the handling of the two bikes are radically different because that was very prominent and stuck in my head. But the riding triangle, it's not something that I can recall enough, like confidently enough, to give you guys a strong opinion on it. All I know is that this is pretty comfy. It says it has a seat height of 825mm, and that's normally a pretty manageable height for me, but this does feel a little bit taller than that, just purely because the seat is quite wide and quite comfortable. To stand up on, this bike is mega comfy. No issue standing up on this bike. We are about to hit the motorway in a moment, so I will comment my thoughts on the motorway, about motorway riding specifically. But honestly, to me this bike just feels like a really good kind of do everything bike. Like, I saw the English biker Dan took it on track. So obviously it's not going to handle or perform like a dedicated sports bike, track bike weapon, but I suppose it still shows that, you know, if you take it with a pinch of salt as to, you know, you're on the track bike on an adventure style machine, then you can still have fun on it. Let's go. It's clear, it's clear. Okay, so we got a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. I don't know why that always surprises me, because it's always here, but it means that I can talk to you hopefully without it being too crackly. So, a few things that I want to touch on that I didn't touch on the launch, because I wasn't in situations that afforded me the ability to form an opinion on such things, or I did, but things have changed slightly. So when I was in Montpellier, we didn't do pretty much any highway riding, and Suzuki do profess to have counterbalancer shafts in this bike, but at high speeds or prolonged motorway speeds, it can feel a little bit buzzy. Now, I do feel like I'm somebody that's quite sensitive to vibrations on a bike, and I can tell when, you know, they're really buzzy, really vibey, and would have me fall to pieces after a day's riding. This isn't one of those that'd have me falling to pieces after a day's riding, but they do feel there. The vibes are a little bit there when you are doing those motorway speeds. But like now, freaking 26 miles an hour, it's nothing, is it? I'm not feeling anything. I definitely need to try and get over so I can start filtering in between 2 and 3, even though the lanes do look quite narrow. Which isn't the best for filtering. Yeah, it's looking quite narrow, to be honest. Oh well, we'll keep chugging along. So yeah, vibes, can notice them a little bit when I've been in the saddle for quite a while. We're talking like 2 or 3 hours or so. Alright, we got normal lanes now, so filtering should be a bit easier. Always give a nod to people that move over. It's very accommodating of them. They don't have to move out of the way for me. I am but a slippery weasel, so that's why I think it's good to just, you know, give them a bit of a nod if they do scutch out your way a little bit. See, it's not great to filter here, because there's a big space to the left which they could go in. I kind of prefer to filter through a gap like this, because they're not going to crash into each other, are they? So a bit safer. So yeah, kind of a little bit buzzy. Also, I find it's quite noisy as a bike, like the wind noise is quite loud. I wear earplugs, so I'm not troubled too badly with it, but there's definitely a lot of noise, like road noise and wind noise, that does just kind of get you on this bike a little bit. But again, like I say, I've got my earplugs in, so I'm not really bothered about it. But again, if you're just a bit sensitive to that, then you might find it too. Now, because it's been a while since I was on this bike, I actually revisited my own YouTube video from the launch, but specifically hanging around the comments a little bit to see what people have said, any questions they had, anything that they've suggested from experience of ownership of these bikes. And one person said that they suffered from like buffeting a little bit and noise with the screen. Now, I'm not suffering too badly with buffeting right now. It is on the lowest setting. But if you do have this bike and you are struggling, one guy suggested that he put this Puig screen on. I think it's Puig, P-U-I-G. And it solved all his issues that he had with the screen. So that's cool to know. I absolutely love the dash on how the BMW dash is my favourite, and that is true, but I do feel like a Suzuki dash is a close second. Just because we've got a 5-inch one here, everything is laid out so lovely and clear. Like, we've got traction control levels, we've got what mode we're in, what ABS we're in, gear indicator nice and clear, fuel bars perfect, revs, nice little retro colour scheme, and it is an ambient lighting dash, so if you go under a tunnel it'll invert. And I do think there are ways to permanently have it on dark mode if that's what you prefer, or to permanently have it on light mode if you like that. I also love the fact that we've got a USB port right there, so handy. Just means that I can keep my phone charged. Brakes on this, perfectly adequate. Suspension for my weight, perfectly adequate. I even feel pretty comfortable hooning on the country roads, as you'll see in Montpellier. It wasn't bouncing around, it wasn't getting bent out of shape. We do have preload adjustability, so if you are a bit heavier than me, you know, you can account for that with a bit of tweaking. If I'm being hypercritical, I'd say it's more on the soft setting than it is the firm. Massive bugbear of people's doesn't have cruise control, but recently Mike opened my eyes to an invention that has transformed riding bikes that don't have cruise control for me on the motorway. It's like, now I'm not gripping the bar. I would like to move over, but I don't want to move over in a lorry's blind spot. That's one awesome thing that I learned from IAM training, which I never considered before. I didn't really care, just whizzed over. But yeah, look at this right hand. I'm maintaining 70. My hand is not gripping the bar in the slightest. And it's because I've got one of those little cruise control fake jobby things that cost like £1.50 on Amazon. And honestly, I did a trip to, well, tried to go to Italy on a Ducati, a really old one, 22-year-old Ducati, and I used that contraption and it literally made the trip manageable. I don't know if I would have been able to cope with my wrist without it, because it really did take the pressure off. It worked better on the Ducati because the Ducati has like a heavier throttle, whereas this is quite a reactive, responsive throttle, so you do have to be careful that you don't go and just wind the throttle on and, you know, rip your neck out of your shoulders. Fuel, I've been a pretty crap reviewer. I didn't, you know, remember when I filled it up what mileage it was at, and then how long it took for the tank to empty itself. Suzuki claim a theoretical 280 miles from this 20-litre tank, and I must say it is pretty good on fuel. I left Ragley Hall at ABR with half a tank, and I got 40 miles from home. It's like a 2.5 hour trip. I got 40 minutes / 40 miles from home, and it just dropped down to the red. My logic was, well, I've got about 20 miles from when the red starts flashing, so I reckon I could have got home from Ragley Hall on half a tank. If you guys have any more questions about the bike, then please feel free to let me know. Now that I've had a bit of a longer time with it, if you've got any off-road related questions, I can certainly see if Mike will help out in that department. But hopefully I'll have an ABR video up so you can see Mike in action. Yeah guys, I hope you've enjoyed this little summary of what I think about Suzuki's V Strom 800 RE. What I will say is it's just a very relaxed and comfortable ride, very easy to manage, very easy to handle, not intimidating at all, but it does have a decent amount of bottom end that is quite intoxicating when you wind it on. Well everyone, I hope you've liked this little summary. Oh, one thing I forgot, which is important, one thing I forgot before I round this off. So, engine heat. On the DE, it was pretty extreme. I did ride that bike in 30-degree heat, and I felt like my right leg was on fire. Like now, I'd be riding the VStrom 800 DE and I would feel heat from the right side of the engine. When I was in Montpellier and we were just riding on the twisties and through the towns and stuff like that, I didn't get the same engine heat and I was really confused because I'm like, it's the exact same engine, what's going on? But the DE comes with a bash plate, doesn't it? And this doesn't. So I wonder if the bash plate on the DE was kind of almost like sending the heat up in a different way to this one. But I must say that I was doing a lot of filtering on the motorway on the way back from Ragley Hall, and it was hours of filtering, it was sustained. And I felt a little bit of heat from the right hand side. Admittedly, nowhere near as intense as on the DE, but I did think, oh, there you are, there is a bit of heat. And people were asking me about it in Montpellier, and I genuinely didn't experience it, to tell you guys, in Montpellier, else I would have, but it just wasn't apparent. Like now, it's not apparent, there's no heat from the right hand side, so I wouldn't be able to report on it. But just filtering for ages and ages, I don't know, maybe it's like kind of slower speeds. The engine gets a bit hot because it's not getting the air hitting it, I don't know. But yeah, I definitely felt it a little bit, so I feel like I do need to kind of update my report on that, because I have felt it, but nowhere near as intense as on the DE, and it wouldn't put me off. It's not like sort of Ducati levels of engine heat. Right, now that I finally remembered that last little bit, I'll round it off. I hope everyone manages to get out on the bike while it's our supposed summer, and I'll see you all in the next one. Ta-ta for now.